It's the Doscinco Project.
Money pouring in, clientele growing down.
With your host, Doscinco.
Let's go!
What up, everybody? You are now tuned into the Doscinco Project, where we talk about business, entertainment, motivation, and mindset. I have another special guest with us in the building today. He works very closely to serial entrepreneur and popular social media influencer Gary Vaynerchuk, also known as Gary V. He is the president of the Sasha Group, a VaynerX company that provides educational consulting and marketing services to help ambitious leaders build strong brands to flex with the times. He spent over 30 years in marketing and advertising, holding many executive positions like Chief Operating Officer and Chief Integration Officer for VaynerMedia, Chief Executive Officer of Cedo Mobile Limited. He's played important roles at Saatchi & Saatchi, Goldman Sachs, KPMG. There's so many to name. Everybody, please welcome James Orsini. How are you today, sir?
I'm excellent. You know, that's 30 years, a long time.
30 years.
When you say it, I feel the age.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for allowing me to be here today. You know, in 2015, I remember seeing the first Gary Vaynerchuk vlog.
Oh, wow.
It's been a long time, but to see the growth of the company and to actually experience it here, I'm truly amazed.
Well,
so
this is really only one of his ventures, but it's certainly, I'm sure, one of his pride and joys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you being so accomplished in your career, being in marketing and advertising, how were you able to connect with Gary Vaynerchuk?
Well, the funny part was I didn't know Gary when I first met him.
Oh, wow.
I knew his brother, AJ, his younger brother.
Okay.
I sat next to him at a Seton Hall University basketball game one day and got to talking, and he told me about a company that he and his brother had started. And we kind of remained friends. I was chief operating officer for Saatchi & Saatchi at the time, and invited him down to see what it was like, you know, when he got bigger. We stayed in touch. I went to Cedo Mobile. I had some developers in Boise, Idaho, who developed something that they thought could be right for Facebook.
Okay.
And they're like, who can we show this to? And I said, I know this kid. He's got a little social media agency. So I called AJ, and he invited me in. And he said, yeah, come on in. We're on Park Avenue. And I went in. There was a couple hundred people in the building.
Oh,
and I was like, wow, he's got a real company here. This is not a couple guys in a cubicle.
Right.
So fast forward, I left Cedo Mobile after 3.5 years and called AJ to just say, I'm going to get back into big advertising again. I'll see you in New York. And he's like, hey, did you ever meet my brother Gary? And I said, no. He said, did you ever hear my brother Gary? I said, not really. He said, do a quick Google search. He won't be hard to find. And I did, and we met, and we hit it off.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So think about it, right? You're 30 years in the game, marketing, advertising. You step foot into the offices of Gary Vaynerchuk, so to speak, and it's heavily focused on social media.
Right.
Obviously, not something in your forte per se, right?
No, I was in public relations, I was in branding, I was in general market advertising, I was in mobile, but I didn't really know anything about social media when I met him.
Wow. So how were you able to navigate that new terrain of social media?
Well, I think what was interesting was he said, he was pretty specific. Hey, I want to build a $500 million integrated, independent, international communications company. Can you help me do it?
Wow.
And I said, yeah, I think I can. You know, so he's like, great. Well, then, you know, don't take one of those other jobs. You've already had them. You know, step out on the cloud, do this with me. And I started first as his chief integration officer because his brother AJ was chief operating officer at the time.
Yep.
You know, he said his quote was, "You've made 25 years of mistakes I don't want to make. So help me avoid the potholes and move faster."
Turn decades into days, huh?
And that's kind of, you know, that was the approach that we took. And you know, early on, it was a lot of, have you ever done this? How would you do this? Do you know somebody who can do that? You know, kind of questioning. And then I was learning from, at the time, 400 plus millennials that were around me. So it was mutual learnings, really. You know, I learned a lot by being here, and there's no substitute for wisdom and experience, and I had both. Right. You know, at that time.
You know, a lot of times, especially, you know, as human beings, we tend to put limits on ourselves, right? And for this person to come up to you and say, hey, I want to build this $500 million company, and you say, hey, I think I can take you there. Yeah. What takes you outside of those limiting beliefs that sometimes we set on ourselves?
Well, so my background's in finance. I started as an accountant. I'm a New York State CPA. I was an auditor for KPMG. I worked at Goldman Sachs. I've seen, I've been a global CFO, overseeing 31 offices in 26 countries when I was at Interbrand. I had some street creds. I felt pretty good about my ability, and I had a willingness to learn more. So, I needed to learn about the social media. I needed to practice social media. You found me on social media.
Absolutely.
Right? So, I wanted to be, I didn't want to be the shoemaker with a hole in my shoe. I wanted to be able to actually begin to practice the craft. Nobody does it like the master, as Gary does, but certainly, I was willing to dabble.
That's amazing. So now you're the president. Well, first and foremost, let's take a step back. Chief Integration Officer. What does that absolutely mean? I mean, what are the roles and responsibilities behind
said,
that?
I want to give you a title that's amorphous enough to have you play in whatever area I need you to play in without anybody really being threatened by the fact that, I was kind of the oldest guy in the building. Like, what's he doing here? So early on, it was weird. It was sitting in big client meetings, working with procurement, setting up internship programs, negotiating leases, working with the general counsel, who now is our global chief operating officer. He went on to become that role. Integration, I had my hand in everything.
Okay.
Because I had a lot of C-suite titles, throughout my career. So, chief operating officer, chief integration officer, chief administrative officer, chief financial officer. So I played a lot of chief kind of roles, chief executive officer. And that was another thing, I was the CEO of a small publicly traded company. So when he was making decisions as a new CEO, I could kind of relate to them. That's a hard and lonely job. Being a CEO is a hard and lonely job.
All the pressure is on you.
Oh man. So, there were times where I would just kind of text him like, man, I know how difficult that decision was. I've been there. Wow. So I think that was a pretty cool thing too, because, iron sharpens iron when it rubs up against each other. Yep. And, that's early on, that's what we were doing.
Man. So Chief Integration Officer, then you move into the Chief Operating Officer. Yeah,
Chief Operating Officer, because his brother AJ had a very public bout with Crohn's disease, and it's stress-induced and things like that. So, this was becoming a big company, and he was like, look, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to find something else to do in a little bit. And they birthed this Vayner Sports thing where they represent sports athletes, and AJ now runs that. But then I became the chief operating officer for about 2 years. And then he came to me and said, you ready to start something new?
Which is the Sasha Group.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, what do you have in mind? And well, I'm on the cover of Entrepreneur Magazine. I got 30 million followers, and we built a company to service Fortune 500. I don't have a company to service small, medium-sized challenger brands. Wow. So I want to start a new company. I want to name it after my dad for legacy purposes, and I want you to run it.
And don't mess it up.
Yeah. Well, he was pretty clear about that. I got my father's name on it, so don't screw it up. I've been doing that for the last 4 years.
Wow. So let's talk about the process of starting the Sasha Group, right? How many employees did you initially have in the process?
So interesting. When we had the conversation, I'm like, yeah, great. Let me not run it like VaynerMedia. Okay. And he's like, well, what does that mean? I said, well, let me take what I learned at KPMG and Goldman Sachs and Interbrand. I could run it like a consultancy on the front end and marry it to what I learned at Saatchi and VaynerMedia and have a digital agency on the back end. Mm-hmm. Because, early on, a majority of our clients were not brand managers with a budget. They were entrepreneurs and founders. So they kind of needed to be educated first, you know what I mean, and consulted before they were ready to market.
Gotcha.
So that was the approach that we took. Okay. And he said, well, what do you need? And I said, well, let me take some of the consulting products that we were using here, inside of the hallways of VaynerMedia, and that was 4D's education, daily digital deep dive education. And then we had a consulting offering called the Mentors Project. These were two things that I helped author alongside him. So we took those over. And then I said that there was a small practice here in New York called Vayner Beta. Dozen people or so took that. And then I asked for Chattanooga. So he's like, well, why do you want the Chattanooga office? And I said, well, I feel like when we go down there, we're selling sunglasses in Seattle. We should be selling umbrellas. And he said, well, what does that mean? I said, well, we're pitching big businesses because that's what we do as Vayner, but there's this whole little entrepreneurial sort of startup-y, Silicon Valley-ish kind of offering down there, running Google Fiber, 5G test bed for cell service. Wow. And so he said, okay. So I had this sort of north-south, 35 people in total, and that's how we birthed it. Now, today we're about 110. 110
employees.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So take me through the process. I'm a brand new company, founder. I'm a little wet behind the ears. I come in to meet the Sasha Group. What happens from there?
Yeah, so we get a feel for, first and foremost, are you doing anything in marketing? Do you actually have a product?
Gotcha.
A lot of entrepreneurs come here with an idea. They don't really have
so they don't have the
an
product
offering yet. You know what I mean? They have an aspiration to be and do something.
Okay.
So that's really like, hey, you're way back here. So let's get you into education, let you understand like how the consumers consume the content on the different platforms, and what the culture of an agency is like, and how you can really have an empathetic approach to employee boss relations, and making sure that low turnover rates, people who are with you stay with you,
right,
and that you listen more than you talk. Like all those kind of things are what's made Gary so hugely successful in this offering. Then there's other times where they're like, okay, look, we got a product, but we hired a small public relations firm.
Yep.
We're paying a retainer of $5,000 or $10,000 a month. Wow. We're like, okay, well, maybe you don't have to do that. We don't need agency of record type status to work with you.
Right.
Now, we've come a long way from the early days. We're now capable of handling anything that isn't Fortune 500.
Nice.
On this side of the fence, and then the VaynerMedia side handles everything that's Fortune 500 above.
Okay. What do you qualify, or how do you qualify your clients?
We were originally saying, hey, if you're under 100 million in revenue, you belong with us. Then it kind of went to 250 million, but really it's more of what's your level of sophistication in digital and social marketing.
Okay.
What are your budget parameters? If you don't have 7-figure budget numbers, you're not likely going to find your way into the VaynerMedia hallways.
Okay.
But we can, we can certainly find a way to service you.
Gotcha. Can you name, from the top of your head, top 3 success stories that have come out of Sasha Group so far?
It's so funny because I always list one. This company, Young Nails, in California, was a $10 million nail polish manufacturer who was selling to 350,000 licensed cosmetologists. And, we met with them, and Gary was in the room as well. And he's like, well, last time I checked, there's 160 million women in the U.S. Maybe we should go direct to consumer. And, we helped them pivot that business. See, the Sasha Group is business consulting as well as marketing, right? So in pivoting to business now, we opened up this whole arena. And then sure enough, the pandemic happens, and you can't go to a licensed cosmetologist. They're all closed down.
Right, exactly.
These guys would have been out of business.
Wow.
But now there was a lot of do-it-yourselfers at home doing their own nail art.
Yep.
And we wound up doubling that business in 3 years. The guy went from 10 million to 20 million top line.
So you've been running it for 4 years, right? Obviously, pandemic happened 2 years ago? 2020. So it's still, the company's relatively new, but how did COVID really affect the Sasha Group?
Yeah, so it was funny. We had to launch some new products during that time, right? Because there was no live productions going on. You weren't going to go on a set and shoot video content, right? So So we introduced some different products to mixtape, we called it. Give us 10 days, $10,000 and 10 assets, and we'll remix them to look like they're new and fresh. We were doing big time solutions. You see a whiteboard here. We're doing big solution whiteboard sessions. We had to take those to virtual whiteboard solution sessions, right?
Okay.
So now we're able to, using a special software, be able to feel like you're in a room and putting a Post-it on a board and things like that. We would DJ certain assets, right? So you have some assets right now, and we would sort of, mix them and re-DJ them so it looks like fresh content, even though it was original content that might have been a year old.
Okay.
Even our education sessions, like the 4Ds, we opened up to virtual. Typically, they're here in a room. In a small classroom, 8 to 10 person type combination classroom workshop type setting. Gary's in the room for 90 minutes. People pay a lot of money to be here. We've sold out every one that we've done, last 4 years.
Okay.
But we're like, hey, we can't get together in person. So how do we not lose this revenue stream? So we opened up something called virtual 4Ds.
Okay.
We charged less money, but what it did was it brought us an international audience. All of a sudden there were people from Australia and the UK and people who wouldn't have incurred the expense to fly in, but now are doing it from their living room and learning lots from it. So we as a company had to pivot, as most others did.
Do you still do that today?
We did because what we recognized was there's a value in some of these things, and they don't need to go away, even though in person is still here.
Absolutely.
So in the example of the 4Ds, we have a live session going on April 18th, and then a virtual one going on June 7th.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what's your 3 to 5 year plan for the Sasha Group?
We got to get the Sasha Group to 50 million. 50 million in top line. That's when it's going to be credible.
Wow.
We're tracking north of 20 right now.
Okay.
But escalating it. We did a little under 10 million in year 1, 12.5 million in year 2, 15.5 million in year 3, 17.5 million in year 4. Wow. We'll do between 20 and 22 in this year. But we got to get it to 50 million.
How do you motivate the staff to keep the eyes on the prize, so to speak? I mean, you're talking about trying to get it to 50 million. I mean, is it scaling with regards to recruiting more employees or getting them to double up on the work?
That's the horrible thing about a service sector model.
Okay.
Typically, in order to grow, you would have to hire more people and take on more space.
Right. More overhead as well.
We have to figure out how to productize more of our offerings. You want one of these, it's 50 grand. You want one of those, it's don't ask me how I make the sausage, just eat the sausage kind of thing.
Right.
So that's going to be a challenge for us, but we have to figure that out.
Okay.
And I've been fortunate in that when we started the Sasha Group, Gary allowed me to bring over, 8 leaders. So, I brought over 8 people at the senior vice president level or above, which is, it's a lot of horsepower for a small company. It's a lot of expense. But, when you're running consultancy, it's kind of that's the model. These entrepreneurs, needed somebody who had been there, done that, right? So we like to say that it's entrepreneurial DNA infused with Fortune 500 experience.
Gotcha. Okay, so obviously, your success did not happen overnight, right? As far as constantly being in the C-suite, running multi-million-dollar companies, multi-agency type of companies. Let's go back to your childhood, right? Did you always see yourself as a businessman? Did you always see yourself?
It was funny. First of all, I had an excellent childhood. I had tremendous parents and a wonderful family, still do. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay.
Not a silver spoon kind of guy. Right. Son of a plumber, proud of that, first generation college.
Wow.
But I was the youngest of 4 children, so, my brothers and sisters were between 10 and 16 years older than me.
Okay.
So I had 3 mothers. Because, I had 2 sisters and a mother.
You were well taken care of.
Yeah, so, I'm at the table at 7, and they're talking politics, and I'm hearing it, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So
you grew up fast mentally.
Yeah, I think that kind of helped. So I was always, a little hustler, willing to make some money however I could from whether it was charging for puppet shows that I was doing in the backyard, or I put together a band that didn't play music, but I found 3 other people that did. I'd be there like air guitar, but I would charge $5 when they were singing. And then started a car cleaning company last year of high school, ran it through college.
Wow.
So at the end of college, had 3 guys working for me. You know, I had garages with heat and hot water that my father built in the backyard. I was providing a pickup and delivery service. So, I was always kind of a hustler.
Of course.
And then, but I was very studious. You know,
Okay.
I was always top of the class kind of guy. And valedictorian in my grammar school, graduated 3rd in my high school, magna cum laude college. So always that kind of guy.
Yep.
And then landed at KPMG. And one of my clients was a Saatchi subsidiary. And that's where I saw the world of advertising and marketing. And I was like, man, this is a cool world. Like I could see myself here someday. Like, that could happen. Now, I did what a lot of guys did in the 80s. They chased money. I went to Wall Street.
Yep.
I knew pretty quick it wasn't for me. I stood there 2 years, but I just knew it wasn't for me.
Yeah, the 80s was very hot in Wall Street. I mean, you're talking
big time.
about Gordon Gekko,
Big time. Absolutely. No, I was there for Black Monday in 88, 87, 88. And then got a call from a guy I worked with at KPMG, and he said, hey, James, the Saatchi brothers just bought a single public relations firm in New York City, and they're going to build a worldwide company. And someday you'll be the CFO of that worldwide company if you leave Goldman Sachs. But you got to leave Goldman to do it.
Wow.
And like you said, nobody was leaving Goldman in the 80s.
Right, no.
And I took the shot, and fortunately for me, within 5 years, we built the 5th largest public relations firm in the world. And I became a global CFO overseeing these 31 offices in 26 countries before I was 30.
Before you were 30.
Yeah, so that's kind of, and he told me I had to tell everybody I was 30. He said, look, when you're showing up in Japan and everything, anybody asks, you're 30.
Wow.
So
now, what was the point in advertising that you were 30? I mean, did you?
No, it was just I was a big job for a young kid.
Yeah,
now it's commonplace.
Right.
Now it's but back then, in the 80s, people like to see snow on the roof, as they say, a little white hair, knowing that you're doing it. Most people weren't crazy about having a boss that was younger than them.
Wow.
So and most of those finance directors around the world were older than I was.
Did you ever experience imposter syndrome? I mean, obviously, this is all brand new to you. You're in new rooms with these, experienced executives. This is all very new to your entire journey. And the next thing you know, you're 30 years old, and now you're commanding a global organization. I mean, did you take a step back and say, because think about it, you came from a household where you said your father was a plumber. You guys didn't really see, I mean, were you exposed?
No, I had no corporate business environment.
Not at all.
In my home. One of my sisters was a secretary for an insurance company. My brother wound up working for my dad and eventually taking over the business and expanding it into general contracting and building and that kind of stuff. He took it to the next level.
Yep.
My other sister owned a hair salon, entrepreneur.
Okay.
Kind of thing. So no, I wasn't really exposed to it, but I knew what I wanted to do. I knew. And look, some of these decisions are sophomoric when you look back at them, but I went on an interview at what was then a company called KMG Main-Herb, and it became KPMG, as you know it today.
Okay.
And I walked into the building on Park Avenue, 52nd Street, and there was waterfalls, and the building was all marble. I was like, I want to work in this building. I'm going to do what I can on this interview as I'm going up the escalator.
Yep.
I'm like, because I want to be here. Park Avenue, New York City,
So this just gave you motivation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
So, it was cool. Fortunately for me, throughout my career, I've had great mentors, bosses, people that cared a lot about me.
Oh, that's great.
Took shots on me, too.
Okay.
I mean, seriously. In every sort of step didn't necessarily belong.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Even my time at Goldman Sachs, I mean, I was there on a pilot program.
Wow.
I was a non-Ivy League, didn't have an MBA. They normally hire Wharton MBAs. and I was on a test with, hey, let's hire somebody who's got 2 years experience and a CPA to see if they could track with the Wharton MBAs. So we were kind of put in a cubicle like a lab rat, you know, 5 of us.
Perfect opportunity for you.
Yeah. Well, look, fortunately for me, the hiring practice remains in effect. So, you know, we did what we had to do. But, you know, just being around that, you know, guys coming in from college wearing Rolex, you know, I'd never seen a Rolex.
That's
you
nuts.
know, and they didn't have a job. They just started.
Right.
Coming in with a Rolex. You know? I'm wearing one now after 30 years, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So what are some habits and routines that you learned along the way? Or better yet, should I say, what was the best piece of advice that you learned that you keep close to you today?
Oh, well, it started with my mom, who said, don't be afraid to dream big dreams and always be a leader, not a follower. So that was really good advice. To others who said, you know, embrace the fundamentals to achieve success, right? Like you don't have to boil the ocean in everything that you're doing. Just kind of, sometimes the answer's in the simple. You know, you don't have to make it look complicated and just take people back to the basics. I thought that was a good thing. I don't really have a to-do list. I do what needs to get done as soon as it comes up.
Gotcha.
Right? Like,
how do you prioritize the tasks that come your way? Like, say, for instance, you have something that's a mediocre task that you can possibly, you know, push off.
Yeah. I use something called the Eisenhower Matrix, which is separates important from urgent, and just kind of plots them in a quadrant type approach. You know, so everything's got to get done. Some things are, you know, need to get done a little faster than others. Some things are a little nice to have and can go in a different box, but everything has got to get done. Gotcha. But, you know, I'm sort of like Johnny on the spot. Like, you know,
let's just get it done.
Give you an example. Yesterday, I went downstairs and my wife's like, hey, by the way, you know what? We ran out of espresso pods. We're having a party here on Sunday. Might want to get some espresso pods. I just took my phone out, hit Amazon. I'm going to deal with this right now.
Yep.
I'm not going to try and remember that we need espresso pods for Sunday when I got 30 people come to my house.
Or better yet, the time that you took to write down that task in your to-do list, you could have just did it.
I'm like, you know, with 3 swipes of a keyboard, and now, you know, there's espresso sitting on my front porch.
Wow. There's, do you time block at all on your schedule? Do you just put like specific major?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
just to make sure no one interferes with
No one messes with it, including lunch.
Well, there you
go. Don't be scheduling over my lunch. I got to have some lunch, right? And I'm not a huge gotta eat at my desk, head down kind of guy. I got to kind of walk outside and breathe. You know, slice of pizza, a salad, but let me just kind of walk outside.
Gotcha.
So I even block out for lunch.
What's the best piece of advice you would give someone that wants to follow along your path of management?
You know, it's so funny. I just had this conversation today because I had a couple of my employees who are on the account service side talking about operations. I want to get into operations. So, you know, Gary's like, there's another one wants to be in operations. I was like, Gary, you and I made operations look really sexy. So I said, that's why everybody wants to be in operations.
Of course.
But you know, the best advice that I got when I came here from Gary was, hey, man, I just want you to breathe. Take a couple weeks, breathe what it is that I'm doing, okay? Don't come in and tell me all the things that I'm doing wrong. You know, just help me, you know, understand my culture first, you know what I mean? And then add your input.
Wow. That's amazing. Especially knowing, I mean, so the thing that we hear all the time on social media, especially from Gary V, is self-awareness. And I know you mentioned self-awareness a lot. And that's something that I've actually incorporated in my day-to-day life. I'm very self-aware of what I do and my flaws as well as my strengths. Knowing that he would make mistakes, he told you to breathe. Like, let me navigate this thing without you coming in and telling me.
Well, the cool thing about him is he learns more from his mistakes than his successes. So he's not afraid to make a mistake. You know what I mean? He is. He's fine to blow it up and start it again. You know, most people are fearful of that. That's not who he is.
Wow.
I got to give you a 5-minute warning only because
Yeah.
we're going to
Absolutely.
lose the room at 1.
Absolutely. How can people connect? Okay, one other question. Gary V, he has multiple companies that are now integrating within one another. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, it was so funny because this is one thing. I was here a week, and the first meeting I brought him into was a meeting with a guy by the name of Russ Sapienza from, at that time, PricewaterhouseCoopers, to talk about a holding company and a holding company model. And originally, that didn't go over too big. That wasn't one of my my moments of glory in Gary's eyes, like, you know. But in order to be this $500 million company, you need a holding company to kind of own all these pieces. You know, you can't just do it under the one VaynerMedia world. So that's, you know, we birthed VaynerX, and we began to acquire some companies and start others, and you know, and now you know, the rest is history.
Here we are.
Yeah, 350 million, 1,800 plus people around the world. So
That's amazing.
And still going.
How can people connect with you, James?
So for the company, everything is The Sasha Group. All of our socials, website, The Sasha Group. For me personally, I'm James Orsini on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm at Jimmy the Pencil on Twitter and TikTok.
You've been such a pleasure to interview. Thank you so much for allowing me to dive into your life a little bit. And we got planes to catch. We ain't got time for the nonsense.